Let me introduce you Axel Streichardt, VP of Product Management of Inside Software. Good morning, Axel.
Hey, morning.
Axel has 20 plus years in the SAP ecosystem. He's an expert in S/4HANA transformation and cloud migration. And Axel is going to enlighten us with a solution study about how can we optimize resources in the supply chain. So please welcome Axel on stage.
Thank you very much. So how is everybody doing? How is everybody doing? It's been a long morning, I know. And I want to kind of deviate a little bit from the typical, let's say, product pitch. I just want to talk about what I'm hearing from customers. And by the way, how many of you here, show some hands, are using SAP as your ERP? Okay. Oh, wow, that's tremendous. I mean, that's what I was expecting specifically here in Germany. And the other question I have is, I mean, we heard a lot in this morning about AI. We heard a lot about some of the products, some of how you're using AI. But how many of you have heard, a presentation or a product or something about AI, and you thought to yourself, it's like, yeah, but can I really trust that? Is that real? Is that something that I can use in my environment? I probably the majority of you here have heard something that's like, maybe not. What I want to talk about in the next 20, 25 minutes is what I'm hearing from customers. I'm always going backwards from customers. What do I hear from customers? And how do we help these customers in their current situation with supply chain, finance, and IT, some of the challenges they have, and how they actually overcame these challenges by using AI. And we are providing, of course, solutions that help these customers, and that's what I want to talk about. My name is Axel Streichardt. You can hear by my accent, I'm from the United States. No, I was born in Germany, but I live in the United States. I live in the Silicon Valley in San Jose. Within Inside Software, I'm responsible for the SAP environment, for all the SAP products, all the SAP solutions that we have at Inside Software. And that's what I want to talk a little bit, because we have multiple customers. I have 25 plus years talking to SAP customers, having worked for companies like AWS and even SAP themselves. So I have a little bit the inside out and outside in knowledge about SAP, and that helps a lot in my customer conversations. And that's why I want to talk and dive a little bit deeper on what are some of the pitfalls that I see customers are communicating and having when they are on the way in their SAP journey and towards AI, and how to overcome this. When I prepared for this session, I went back to look at all the conversations I had with customers around SAP, some of the challenges they have specifically in supply chain, in finance, and also in IT. And it was really staggering. It was really something that blew my mind, because it is pretty much, when you look at this number, it's unbelievable, right? But it's actually not one big number. It's actually many, many tiny, small numbers. It's kind of, I want to call it death by a thousand cuts, right? What it means is, when I talk to customers, they're telling me, I have challenges with my master data. It is not consistent, coherent between different plans. We have customers, they have 10, 20, 30 different SAP instances across the world. And they're telling me the master data is not consistent between all of these different SAP systems. That's a huge, big challenge. The other thing that I also saw, and when I talk to these customers, is they often don't know what they don't know. The numbers might show them, hey, everything is green, everything is great. But when you dive deeper, they didn't know that actually 25, 30, 40 different purchase orders are stuck in a warehouse somewhere just because a part couldn't make it on time into their production line. They didn't know that. It was invisible for the CFO. We also have a customer very recently, one of the biggest SAP customers in the world. They have many, many SAP instances around the world. They need to consolidate all their financial information from all these different parts of the world into one central finance instance. The interesting thing is they're struggling big time on how do I get all this data together? How do I make sure I am actually taking the right data and I clean up the data and I'm making sure that everything that I'm reporting on then is trustworthy. The data is clean. And that's a big challenge for them, specifically when they're also saying, hey, from time to time I have mergers and acquisitions. Through an acquisition, you might just introduce another ERP system. It's not always SAP. Many of our customers, they have SAP and non-SAP. Now you have the next big challenge. How do you consolidate all this data between SAP and non-SAP data? And then you want to enrich it with external data as well, with production data, POS systems, homegrown transporting systems, right? Or I always give this example, if you're an ice cream shop, you want to know the weather data. You want to correlate the weather data with all the transactional data that you have, because it has an impact. And then on top of all of that, you now have customers migrating from ECC to S4. Interestingly, it's roughly 36–38% of customers currently already migrated to S4. That means a lot of customers are still in this migration process. I had one customer where we provided our solution and we ran the report on ECC. And it showed them, let's say, 100 purchase orders that are blocked right now. They migrated and they had the data migration part done. And interestingly, is we ran the same report again on S4. And it showed a completely different number. Of course, the CFO was frantic. He said, I cannot trust this data. I have no idea if the data migration that we did between ECC and S4 really worked and was really successful. So his trust level in everything, in all this data, actually sank down. And that's a big challenge, because if you want to then move towards AI, there is no way, if you're not trusting your data, that you can introduce AI as the solution that will solve all your problems, all your data problems. The interesting thing is, I mean, I showed the $50 million, and that came up with, hey, I talked to customers, and they showed me, hey, I'm losing $1 million here. The master data has an impact on my financials. But it's not just me. It's also Gartner. Actually, Gartner said that they are, in average, finding customers losing $15 million per year just because of bad data. And that's a lot. As I said before, that needs to be solved before you actually move on. So that's why I'm hearing then, from other vendors, they're saying, hey, then why don't you use AI to fix that problem? Actually, AI makes it worse. So it means you're not solving the problem, you're actually accelerating the challenges. So it keeps continuing and it's getting worse. So what we are hearing from CFOs and CEOs and CIOs is they need to stabilize this. They need to go back to the drawing board and making sure that the data they're using for later analytics, for AI, right, needs to be clean before they actually move on. The interesting thing is that when you look at the resources that are necessary to clean up the data, to prepare the data for analytics, to prepare the data for AI, that's 80% of the work. 80%. 20% is then displaying it and you put it in dashboards or what have you. But 80% of the work, and that's 60% to cleaning up the data and 20%, roughly 20%, to actually prep the data. So that's 80% of people, resources, time that you need to spend in order to get your data clean. But without it, it doesn't make sense to actually move on. Now, I mentioned that I run the SAP team and the SAP products within Inside Software. Who's Inside Software? The definition or what we're doing, our motion here. From an SAP perspective, what we have done in the past, I want to say 10, 15 years, is actually we acquired companies that have very, very specific technology, skills, experience in the SAP space. And we combined all these companies together. We migrated all these companies together in order to solve customer challenges and problems in the supply chain, finance, and IT space. So we actually have solutions that actually drive and indicate and seek challenges that customers have. They're providing the insight, and they're also helping making the decisions. And that's another bold statement that I have for you is we believe, and I'm a very strong believer, and I'm driving this with roadmap, I'm driving with this mergers and with more acquisitions, right? But I'm a strong believer that we're gonna challenge the status quo on how customers like yourself are making decisions in the SAP space with finance, supply chain, and IT. We challenge that. We believe that in the future, near future, and we're already having a solution around this, you don't need, and you don't go through dashboards anymore. You don't need reports anymore. You will use AI to answer all your business questions. And actually, I go a step further. AI will be proactive, telling you where your challenges are. It will provide you recommendations, ideas, how you can solve your challenges, and you can actually use AI to then solve these problems in your SAP and non-SAP environments. Now you ask yourself, yeah, wait a second, I heard that before. Actually, we already have that. And I can show you this. I hope we have time so I can actually show you a demo in a second. But of course, we are in an inflection point, right? So every time if you're in the supply chain, in the finance, or even in the IT department, what you see is that you need flexibility. You need to react fast, right? I mean, we heard all about the tariffs, right? Challenging. It changes every day. So what it means is you have to be fast. You have to have a system and a data consistency, but where you need to react sometimes in hours, not days, not weeks, not months. You need this kind of flexibility. And we also, if I don't know if you remember, there was a boat actually stuck in the Suez Canal. So supply chain was disrupted, and goods didn't actually arrive at the harbor. So you need to act fast. You need the flexibility. And the funny thing is, you don't want to wait for IT to provide you the data or to provide you the insights that you need right now. You don't want to wait. You just need it now. So get the data right now. And we're going to give you this flexibility. The other thing is, I mean, if many people here are in the SAP space, and SAP announced, hey, by 2027, we want customers to migrate to S4 with an extension to 2030. But even if you look at it from a 5-year perspective, it's right around the corner. Knowing that an SAP migration from ECC to S4 can take you up to 2-3 years. I mentioned this customer who has big challenges with their data migration. They realized, oops, we made a mistake, back to the drawing board, back to square zero. So it's a huge investment in time and resources to do the data migration. And you need to have trust that once you're done with your data migration, the data is clean in ECC and S4. We also see a lot of customers are in between. They have ECC, they're still running it, but at the same time, they start migrating certain functionality into S4. So the solution that you needs to have legs in all these different environments. So because it captures all the data from all these different SAP and non-SAP systems. So it is important not just having flexibility, having kind of data at your fingertips, but also the different data from the different systems, right? It could be in between. So the solution needs to support ECC, S4, on-prem, cloud. It doesn't matter. It should have ties into all these different SAP environments. So what it means is we see a lot of customers looking at this and saying, yeah, we have these challenges, so what can you actually provide to help us in these regards? Everybody probably here in this room would love to be on the far left side. Everybody, I guess, right? So why not having an automated system? Again, what I said in the beginning, you have ChatGPT for decision making for your SAP and non-SAP environments. So in other words, instead of going through dashboards and reports and you're getting through all this data, why not AI let me do the work, right? That's on the far left. But in order to do that, you have to do your work on the right first, right? So probably most of the people here are maybe in the current state and maybe towards the available now. But the point is, you need, what I said, the flexibility, you need the clean data. You also need SAP and non-SAP data. But more importantly, you need a system, you need a solution that's already, rock solid. A solution that customers are using for years. So we are in this SAP business now here at Inside Software for 25 plus years. So we have done all of that. We optimized all the different business processes in the SAP. We extracted the data. We know this data. We have the data context. And that's very, very important if you move all the way to the left-hand side. When I said 80% of the resources necessary is actually to get your data clean, the interesting thing is when you hear these AI stories, very often you see a little symbol that says, okay, here's an SAP system and here are your other sources. And we're just extracting the data and put it in a data store, in a database, in a centralized point. What they don't tell you is you are actually by yourself with this extraction part. And as I said, this is 80% of your work. What we are doing is we are providing you this data extraction out of the box. We're doing this for 25 plus years. All the different business processes in your SAP and non-SAP system, we aggregate this. We enrich it with additional data. We actually have our own intellectual property that we use in order to provide more data, pre-aggregate data, data that you cannot get natively out of an SAP system. We're providing this. You can also enrich it with external data like weather, stock, what have you, right? If that's necessary for you. And that's where we're going. That's why it is so important if you want to get to this future state where you're saying, hey, I want to have AI to help me automate this entire process, then you have to have it with someone who understands the data, who has done the business process analytics before, where you can do this manually, but then we're automating this using AI. Now, you probably agree with me that in order to be ready with your data, you need, what I said before, consistency, right? When you have master data, it needs to be consistent across your entire organization, and countries, continents, right? The data needs to be clean, and that's not just master data. It needs to be accurate. Right? You cannot have fuzzy logic where the data cannot be trusted. And that's on your finance data, it's on your supply chain data, on your IT data. It has to have context. This is the hardest part, to make kind of a tool understand what does this data even mean. And this is super important because without context, I cannot aggregate and I cannot put it in conjunction with other data, because I have no idea what it means in a business context. You want to give then your users, your power users, the flexibility so that they can actually run their own little queries. They can run their own little reports if necessary. You don't want to wait for IT to provide you this all this information. Now, the hard truth is what I said is 85% of AI projects fail. And the reason is exactly you have to follow a certain path in order to make your data clean, in order to make sure that it's reliable data, but it's also flexible because data is not static. In an SAP system, you constantly have data changes. So whatever solution we want to use, it needs to be extremely flexible. And that's why we believe some customers try to skip a step or two, and that's why the number is very high of AI projects that failed. So now you're asking yourself, okay, what is Insight Software doing? That's exactly what we're providing. We have the experience in the SAP space to combine SAP, ECC, S4, on-prem cloud. We combine all this data with non-SAP data. So if you have JD Edwards, you have Infor, you heard the team talking about their solution. If you have data in other sources, we have over 26 ERP systems as a source that we can combine with SAP data. But it's not just that. You need to understand the data. As I said, you need to have the context of the data. And we're doing this for 25 years. So in other words, we understand SAP data. We understand where do I need to get the information, the data from, in order to, let's say, answer a very particular business question. The good news is today, customers or business users can do this analysis on their own. They don't have to wait for IT. We're providing them the data, they can run their analysis. But what we do is, we want to automate this. As I said, we want to automate it by using AI. The funny thing is, we're already doing this. So we already have the underlying architecture. We have everything we need in order to extract the data, prepare the data, so AI can actually be used to proactively looking at challenges in your supply chain, making sure that your finance data is accurate, and can report on it automatically. So when you log into the system, and I can actually show you a demo, when you log into the system, depending on your job title, it already tells you, hey, be mindful, here are your top 3 challenges today. You have a problem in this plant. You have a supply chain challenge here. You have other financial problems that need your attention. Dive deeper. I help you with that. So that's what we are already providing. So it gives the business user actually a proactive approach to solve problems. That's why I said I strongly believe that we are challenging the status quo of how you're making your decisions in the SAP in the SAP space. So we have all these capabilities already today. We're just adding AI on top of this, so that you kind of automate this entire process. The good news is, based on your findings and based on what are some of the challenges, of course you want to solve it. We also have the capability to write back into an SAP system. Let's say you have vendor problems and you need to update 20 vendors, right? You can do this automatically, like in ChatGPT, saying, hey, update these vendors from vendor X to vendor Y. You can do all of this with our solution. And that's we call it the Unified Intelligent Platform for SAP. It's an AI-driven decision-making solution for SAP, non-SAP, on-prem, cloud. It provides you really an end-to-end for proactively seeking your challenges, providing your suggestions, you're making the decision, and based on your decision, it actually writes the data back into SAP. Now, the question is, where do I start? You can start today. So the solutions that we have already provide you the ability to find challenges in your supply chain, finance, or IT. We already have this flexibility. We're providing this data model that your business user can use and drill down and finding all these different challenges. We have 600 plus templates already in the product out of the box. We're extracting the data from SAP and non-SAP systems out of the box. You have that today. What we are saying is, like, if you want to use this today, gain the trust that the solution, the information you get, the answers you get, are trustworthy, so that later, when you put AI into the mix, you know, okay, it's based on the decision-making process that I was using before, and it was trustworthy. So, of course, I thought I could show you a demo here. But what I would rather encourage you to do is, we have a booth here, and I would like to encourage you to come to the booth. I'm going to show you the demo in the booth, and we can talk about this, really do a deep dive into what is your situation today, where are you in your SAP journey, do you want to go the AI route? And by the way, we already have customers already on the path using that, what I just described. So in other words, you can start today with what I just introduced to you in the last 20, 25 minutes. And having said that, I think I'm on the mark with my presentation. So any questions you have? What kind of questions do you have for me? I was so convincing. Go for it.
Yes, really like the speech. Thank you very much. My question would be, in my opinion, the employees have a lot of resistance or have a lot of doubts for those solutions. And even if you have a very good technical solution on the way, very often it's hard to convince everybody to do it. Are you relying on those convincing technologies or convincing them? Or is this something that can even work if people are a little bit hesitating because you take the data directly or something?
That's a great question. So of course, adoption is key here, right? But I don't know how you, in your daily work, use AI. I'm using it daily. I'm using it extensively. It helps me reducing time that I need for repetitive, tasks. And I save, I want to say hours, not days, but let's say hours per week because I'm using AI. I totally agree that customers or your employees, they probably look at this and say, can I really trust it? That's why I said, if you start today and if you use our solution today, they already do this manually. They do this work manually, right? So they're going through, the data extraction is already done. They get their data model. That's fantastic. They're actually creating the reports. They have dashboards. They have all these different templates they can use. They can work on this manually, right? So to find, we have a problem in this plant. We have a problem with this in this product. The supply chain is broken, right? We have new tariffs coming from somewhere. So we need to act. We need to do something. So they do this manually. But then, if you're then introducing AI and saying, hey, why do you want to go through all of these dashboards? Why do you want to go through your report? Why don't you ask just the question, what is my most pressing supply chain challenge today? And it gives you the answer, right? And like what you do today probably with when you create, or let's say a document, I mean, why not using AI? Right? AI with the right data underneath, and this is always the point that I want to make, is it has to be reliable data. I very recently used ChatGPT and said, hey, can you give me, write me some document. It wrote me a document and said, no, but that's wrong. So I told ChatGPT, no, you were wrong here and there. And it said, yeah, you're right, I was wrong, right? So that's not reliable, that's not trustworthy, right? If I have to say, do I need to double check if since the AI is actually based on the data we're already providing for 25 years, I mean, through this whole process to get the data out of SAP and non-SAP systems, I'm pretty sure the acceptance and the time savings, for these employees is way bigger than going through these reports. And they're also error prone, right? Maybe your employee is going through this and someone finds out, no, you were wrong, right? It will also increase the confidence in using AI because it's more accurate based on the data that sits underneath. I hope I could answer the question. Any other question?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think it is very relevant to all of us. I really think so. For this data quality, there is one question I really don't know. How are you going to take accountability? Because you're right. When the data is wrong, the decisions are wrong. And if we give responsibility to a person for the data quality, we can ask the responsibility, the consequences. Mm-hmm. If we are doing it with the AI, and in time there is going to be a wrong decision made, who is going to take the accountability?
But you're bringing up a very, very good point, and thank you for calling this out. What we have today, right, in the solution that we are providing where you can do this manually, we're extracting the data, we already have the data checks included. So we are already doing this automatically. When we're extracting the data from SAP, we're checking for accuracy of the data. And we're making adjustments depending on our findings of the SAP data. For instance, you have certain information in 15 different tables. What if 2 of them have a complete different date or time or value, right? Which one is correct? So we actually using AI then to look at the data, and based on, let's say, statistics, we then know, okay, this cannot be. This data is in the future or it's in the past. It cannot be, right? So we are doing these checks frequently, all the time. When we're extracting the data, we're already doing these validity checks all the time. So it's not a person that's making the decision. We are already doing this for them. We're extracting the data, putting it into a data model, and the data that sits in the data model is already checked, is already enriched, is between SAP and non-SAP data, and is actually prepared for the business user. Now you can run your analytics, your dashboards, your reports, whatsoever. Did I answer your question?
Somehow.
Okay.
I think the accountability still remains somewhere, so kind of this is my job. An unplanned event occurs,
okay,
and then you do the analysis. Why do we have this unplanned event? And when there is some accountability, a real person, you have a kind of interview and you have a better possibility to find the root cause and to correct it.
Okay.
When we have this accountability given to an AI, how are we going to, how can I say, find the...
You mean incorporating kind of people, kind of people's input?
Kind of, the data is wrong, and we make the decision because of the wrong data.
Right.
And we give this data reliability, accountability to an AI. So AI is responsible for the data quality.
Yes.
And again, sometimes a wrong data is used for the decisions. How
Right.
are we going to find the accountable for this issue?
That really depends. So, but we can dive a little bit deeper
Yes, I think so.
But the idea is that in this case, right? So number one is AI learns, right? It is not like static where it says, okay, I made a mistake. I do the same mistake, make the same mistake over and over again. It learns. It understands like, okay, that was wrong. Next time I give you the correct one, right? But you ask about responsibility, right? So then who's responsible? We actually have built into our tool, we have let's call it a workflow, right? Because based on your decision, right, someone is up with the next step, right? So let's say you're saying, hey, someone needs to do something physically. We actually have a workflow. We have a workflow, and it actually assigns a task to someone, to a person. If this person doesn't do what they're supposed to be doing, right, there are warnings. There are warnings, there are escalations, there's approval processes. All of this is built in
Already. Okay.
in order to kind of minimize what you're saying. Is it 100%? Not probably 100%, but it learns to become probably to 99%.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Axel, thank you very much. Yes, I think, you have to take all the other questions later. Otherwise, I'll probably